I want to begin with something personal, just tell you a little bit about my story and how I got here. As was mentioned earlier, I came to America at the age of 7. Immigrated here, and I did so legally, I should say. And I stood in line for a very long period of time for the honor to be an American, and I'm so proud to be an American today. My kids, thank you. My kids were born here, so they're genuine Americans, and I remind them of how lucky they are that they won the lottery. Being an American, you have a less than 2% chance of being an American. So the minute you're born, you win the lottery, and I remind them that of every day. My parents came here, and we came with nothing. My dad washed dishes. After being a political prisoner in Cuba, he came here. We washed dishes, and my mom cleaned houses to put food on our table. And they taught us a couple of important lessons. The first one was that you have to work hard because nothing is free, and that you have to get educated, because that was our ticket out of that situation that we were found on, and that we had to love this adopted country. And that was instilled in us from the very beginning. A country that gave us the opportunity that our own society didn't even give us. So we were taught to love America. And then they would always remind us that at some point in our life, we would have to pay back this great society that gave us so much. And that is what I'm doing today. I'm raising my hand and paying back the great debt this country has allowed me to have. I saw firsthand what happens when government power goes unchecked. You see it in a number of different socialist environments, and unfortunately, we're seeing that evolve here in this great state. And I got to tell you, there's a concept here of conservatism, and it's something that I subscribe to, and something that I think all of you believe, and that is the belief that, and in the individual and the hard work and the rule of law, the things that are common sense that drove and made this country so amazing. From the very beginning, America understood the government had a responsibility to be sound stewards for the taxpayers. And in 1790, Alexander Hamilton really talked about this. He argued that a free nation could only endure if its finances were transparent, disciplined, and honestly accounted for. And we have lost track of that. Albany has lost track of that. And my intent is to bring that back to this great state. Today New York stands at a crossroads, not because our people are failing, but because our government is failing. You heard previous grievances of how poor this government is run and how disconnected the politicians in Albany are. Families are working harder, small businesses are struggling, young people are leaving the state in record numbers. And since the liberal Democrats have gained one-party control in 2018, spending has exploded, while accountability has just vanished. We now face a $260 billion budget. Let me say that number again, it's astronomical. $260 billion. One of the largest in the world. It's insane. And yet every year we're told the budget is balanced, only to confront deficits a month later. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's a fiscal crisis created by irresponsible politicians. The state comptroller is required by law to certify the budget and to certify that that budget is balanced on a yearly basis. That certification is supposed to mean something. Instead, year after year, Albany passes budgets built with unrealistic assumptions, temporary gimmicks, and spending that grow faster than the economy does. And year after year, our current comptroller just signs off on that. Tom DiNapoli has held that office for 17 years. 17 years. That's the lifespan of a teenager, my kid's age. 17 years of higher spending, 17 years of meaningless audits, 17 years of approvals with zero accountability. The state comptroller's office has stopped acting as an independent watchdog and just become a cheap rubber stamp for the Democratic Party. That failure has consequences, and I'm running for state comptroller to stop that. My priorities are simple. They flow directly from the responsibilities of the office. New York State Comptroller, as a comptroller, I will make my focus to protect taxpayers, to hold government accountable, and to invest in the future of New York. First, I intend to protect the taxpayers by doing the following: Take the pension system, for example. New York's pension system is one of the largest in the country. It's a $290 billion fund, one of the largest in the country. It's incredibly powerful. Yet last year, we only had about a 5.8 return on that fund. Compare other funds like CalPERS or the Teachers Union, Ontario's Teachers Union in Canada. They've returned on average 12%. If you put that money in treasury bills, you probably would get the same return as we did in New York. It was dismal. You would get fired on Wall Street if you had those kinds of returns. When pension investments fall short, unfortunately, our local governments pay for that. They have to make up the difference, and those costs are passed on directly to homeowners and through higher taxes. As State Comptroller, I'm going to bring back discipline and professionalism to the pension management system. We're going to improve long-term returns. We're going to reduce unnecessary costs. We pay $1.2 billion to Wall Street in fees. We have 2,700 employees, and only a handful of them actually do investing. Why is that? It's illogical. It does not make sense. Protecting taxpayers also means enforcing the property tax cap. The cap exists to prevent homeowners, especially seniors and working families, from being taxed out of their homes. I intend to make sure that local politicians enforce that so that our seniors and our struggling families don't lose their homes. Second, I'm going to fight fraud and abuse. You heard earlier, our Medicaid budget is insane. It's $100 billion. We contribute $39 billion of state funds to that Medicaid program. And to be quite honest, absolutely correct, I would argue that there's probably logarithmic amounts of fraud compared to Minnesota in this state. And we're going to find that, I guarantee you that. You know, one of the other areas that I think need a lot of focus is the MTA. We mentioned the MTA earlier, but the MTA is a clear example. Billions of costs, overruns, projects delayed, riders suffering fare increases, and services that are deteriorating. You know, like was mentioned earlier, the MTA is run as a separate entity, raises its own debt. The MTA is $50 billion in debt. That's a debt that we all guarantee, even though it's a separate entity, and that needs to stop. So I'm going to audit the MTA day one. We're going to look at every contract. We're going to look at every contract, every senior employee, every low-level employee, every investment we have made in the MTA to ensure that your dollars are going to yield to something fruitful. And if they're not, we're going to stop it day one. And now, unfortunately, as you guys know, we have a card-carrying communist in New York City. And believe me, I know a communist when I see one. I used to live around them. And we're going to stop. We're going to make sure that this communist does not get away with spending your hard-earned taxpayer dollars without scrutiny. I will use the oversight authority of the State Comptroller's Office to stop Zoran Mandami's radical agenda. And that is my solemn promise to you. You know, instead of stopping fraud in real time, Tom DiNapoli's approach has been to explain the fraud later without any consequences. That is what happened when a watchdog becomes a lapdog. And if I'm elected State Comptroller, that changes day one. We will use real-time auditing tools, modern data analytics, and experienced financial forensics accounting to find fraud and abuse. And I will have federal prosecutors and state prosecutors on speed dial. I will call them whenever I see fraud. I promise you that. And we will put those people in jail. The third part of our agenda is to invest in New York. You know, across upstate, cities and towns like this are living the consequences of Albany's failed economic policies and development programs. Storied cities that have built Americas, companies like General Electric, Kodak, Remington, Corning, not only built the state, but built our great country. And these cities have been left behind. That will stop if I'm comptroller. And when I'm controller, that will stop. As the sole trustee of the $290 billion pension fund, the state comptroller has an enormous ability to attract and create jobs throughout our state. Unfortunately, Tom DiNapoli has not been up to the task. Right now, the state comptroller has $1.6 billion set aside to do that, to grow businesses in our state, and he's done nothing. He has invested less than half of that in economic growth. I plan to set aside $10 billion for economic growth in the state and to make sure that we deploy that capital to get real returns, real Wall Street-driven returns, but to also make sure that we bring companies here and that we create the next generation of jobs in artificial intelligence, in biotechnology, in advanced manufacturing, and robotics to ensure that our kids don't have to leave the state for better jobs. As the sole trustee of the fund, we also have an immense power on existing corporation. I'll give you an example. The fund right now invests about $3.2 billion in Microsoft, $1.2 billion in Google. I guarantee you Tom DiNapoli has not called those CEOs and asked them, if we're investing in you, why aren't you investing in New York? And I guarantee you I will make those phone calls. And I can make you this promise. I will not allow AOC or other crazy lunatic socialists to drive away Amazon and its $25,000 jobs that we have the opportunity to garner here. That will not happen again, I promise you that. This election is not about right or left, it's about right versus wrong. And every member of the Conservative Party here knows our founding fathers built checks and balances in our government to hold it accountable to the people. It is time we had a state comptroller who believes Albany must be accountable to New Yorkers. I will be that conservative watchdog in New York. I will ask the hard questions before money is spent, and I will make it my mission to protect every taxpayer dollar. Again, I want to thank Chairman Cassara and members of the New York State Conservative Party for inviting me to join today. I want to thank you for your support. With your help and support, we will win in November. We will bring logic back to how we spend money in Albany. God bless you. God bless the Empire State, a state that built a country in this remarkable 250-year experiment we call America. Thank you so much.